All right, in just a few moments from now, we have our good friend, Mr. Charlie Rauh, on the air with us. And this is a little piece that he sent me, which is not on any record. And it's called Lullaby for Captiva. And we're going to hear it right now on WUSB Stony Brook. So I got a good, beautiful, beautiful material right there from Charlie Rauh about Captiva, which we'll be discussing shortly, and got a chance to talk to my good friend Charlie the other day. He's of course busy playing everywhere, so he couldn't be with us live, but we had a great afternoon's chat, and let's join he and I right now. Mr. Charlie Rauh, composer, guitarist, and at the end of the interview, I think we're going to give away a copy of his most recent CD, signed. So stay tuned. Here's Charlie Rauh and I right here on WUSB Stony Brook on Finn's Revolution. Charlie Rauh, thanks so much for joining us on Finn's Revolution on WUSB Stony Brook.
Oh, thank you for having me, Finn.
It's always great to have you on, and we do play your music quite regularly here on the show. Of course, it's excellent, and amazing. You're just, I don't want to say amazing yet. We'll save the praise to the end. We don't want you to get a big head, but a really fascinating guitar player with a real voice of your own.
Thank you very much.
And I would say that you've been on some adventures, not just recently, but generally in your career. Done all kinds of things, traveled the world, some places I'm extremely envious about, and done some musical work in those places that's just like astounding. And I always love how your style plays to, shall we say, kind of where you are. Do you know what I mean? Do you feel that?
I do. I'm glad you noticed that and point that out. I try to be informed by the people and the places that I go, and try to take some of it back with me when I come back here to New York. I feel like for me, traveling is really important, just so I don't become too microcosmic in the way that I view playing, and bring in the elements of the other cultures and other ideas. Just to kind of keep growing and keep things fresh. So,
right, and it's also not like all of a sudden you're doing a certain kind of music when you're in a certain place, but those influences just like seep in, and it just adds to your entire palette. It's really nice.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I'm not particularly good at learning different styles, as in like actually learning different styles. I can't, I have a lot of friends that can just kind of switch, back and forth between playing really authentic versions of different genres of music. And I've, I don't really see it as a negative thing, but I just can't really do that. I don't have that skill set. So for me, when I go somewhere and I'm inspired by the music, what I do take away from it maybe is a little more subtle, more conceptual. Just taking in what I perceive the music to sound like, or what I perceive the landscapes to look like. So that's kind of how I take that influence. I've also never really been that good at transcribing things, so I don't really listen to, I really love, for instance, Nordic folk music, but I never try to note for note transcribe archival recordings or anything. I just listen to it and I let it come out the way it comes out.
The way it comes out of you.
Yeah. Which I really enjoy that, and I feel like it's worth pursuing as a method of taking in information. But yeah, it is. I gotta say, I'm kind of jealous of people that can listen to something and just learn how to do it. Because it sounds fun. I kind of would like to be able to do that, but I just haven't really been too successful in my attempts.
Well, the fact that you're just you all the time and just bringing in these influences is what defines your music. And
thank you.
It's that's well worth that. So you're doing, as far as I'm concerned, you're doing all the right things.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That's very encouraging to hear.
You're welcome. So let's go backwards a little bit.
Okay.
And when I say backwards, I mean we'll start in the present. You just came back from a bit of you just had a grant. Is that correct? Is that what it was? Or was it
yeah, I was invited by the Robert Rauschenberg Foundation.
The artist?
To be, the amazing artist,
Absolutely.
multidisciplinary in every sense of the word. But his foundation, he left a residency, an artist residency in Captiva, Florida, which is where his studio, where he worked in his later years, is still set up. So it's a lot of it, I believe, is visual art, but they extend it to everybody. So I was one of 6 artists in residence this time, in August and the first half of September.
Wow. So it's like 6 weeks?
It is 6 weeks, and yeah, there were 6 of us, and it was a really amazing opportunity to just gain some perspective, be in a place that has that kind of history of the work that Robert Rauschenberg did, and just get just being in a place I'd never been, and getting the intake from all the other artists and exchanging ideas and working on music. I did a lot of writing and recording, and recorded a new record that's going to come out on Destiny Records next year in 2019.
That's exciting.
So yeah, it was really nice, and also just had a lot of time to do nothing, which is also kind of nice.
Well, it allows you to clear your head and focus on the pursuit. You know?
Yeah. So there's something to play music about, and not just make it all output. It was a nice chance to get some input. So
okay. So what's the average day like there for you? What was your average day like at this essentially retreat?
I would try to get up relatively early.
You mean early for you or early?
Yeah, early for me. My objective was to get up by 9 a.m.
That's a good time.
Just kind of have a leisurely start to the morning, try to have some coffee and make some eggs or something, and then go to the studio and start writing and recording or practicing. I tried not to make a routine. I tried to just work when I wanted to work, which seemed to go well for me. Some days I wouldn't do anything. I would just sleep until noon and then go swim in the ocean for a while. That was also nice.
Oh yeah. So I'm assuming it's right on the ocean. Yes?
It's Captiva's a long, small island off the coast of southern Florida.
Okay.
So you could walk, coast to coast of the island in probably like 20 minutes or so.
That's beautiful.
It was really fantastic. I feel really privileged to have been able to do it.
So did you wind up writing the entire new album there? Is that how that worked? Or had you had stuff from beforehand?
Both, actually. I had, over the past 2 years, been writing about different places and people I encountered over the past 2 years. So I wrote some music about places I'd been, like an island called Fano, off the coast of Denmark that I visited. There's a piece about that on it. I wrote some music about just the state of mind that you get in when you're traveling. A lot of time by yourself, just on a plane or a train or something. There's a lot about that. And I was also inspired a lot by non-musical influences. I mean, neither of those are musical, but a lot of the things that influenced this music were not particularly other musical artists or things. It's more experiential music.
Okay.
So one of them would be Anna Akhmatova, a poet. I was really inspired by her poem Requiem, which is a long-form poem. There's some music on the record about that. And there's a French artist, Natalie Lette, that I really like, and she had a massive impact just on the general approach. Her art is they almost look like really kind of strange cartoon characters that are in these settings, often in nature settings, where they're either really small or the setting is really small, and I really like that. I like the idea of focusing on smaller things. So this record, the entire thing is about 16 or 17 minutes long. There's 9 songs, and they're all very short. So a lot of the influence musically comes from lullabies.
Okay.
And I like the idea of, there's, unlike my first record, Veritas, that also came out on Destiny Records, there's no improvisation on this. So it's all solo acoustic guitar, very simple melodies, and recorded in different places. So the sounds are just all natural sounds. There's no effects on it. There's any reverb or anything like that is from the actual space. So it's more a lot more experiential in how I wrote it and how I recorded it. I recorded it with one mic, an XY condenser mic that I would just put in different spots. I'd open the doors and the windows to do some takes, then I'd close them and do other takes. Things like that.
Bring different atmospherics into play. With music.
and
Right.
it's definitely more on the side of listening to on headphones or in a very quiet room to really get those sounds, because they're pretty subtle. Some of it was recorded during a storm, which was kind of interesting. I tried it out and I thought it was cool. I sent it to the label and luckily they didn't shoot it down. So actually the last track was recorded during a rainstorm.
Okay.
Yeah.
People sometimes add those effects, but everything we're hearing is absolutely genuine.
Yeah, nothing is added. Yeah.
Okay.
Nothing's added at all. It's just one acoustic guitar in a space. And it was recorded in 2 different spaces.
Now, and this was also your living quarters there, or attached to it?
No, these were 2 different places on the grounds. I was generously provided places to work and a separate place to stay.
Oh, that's fantastic. How
So I
great is
lived.
that?
Oh yeah, it was, again, I feel extremely privileged to have had the opportunity, and the staff at the Rauschenberg residency was very accommodating and encouraging for me to just work the way I wanted to, as they were with all the residents. But the house I was staying in was called the Beach House for obvious reasons. It was on the beach. And it's kind of cool. They filmed, do you know the Michael Mann film, Manhunter?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it was filmed there.
Oh, okay.
At that house. So there's some.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So did you sleep well over there?
There was a lot of jokes about that while we were.
I'm sure.
So that's where I lived, and I would practice there sometimes as well. But I worked right across from that. There was a studio called the Garage Studio, which was a converted garage into a very high vaulted ceiling. But finished with a wooden floor and made into more of a workspace. So I recorded a lot in there. And then on the other side of the island, there's a little house called the Waldo Cottage, and that's where I really kind of went to town. It was a little cottage built in the 1920s, and has been there, ever since. And I used to go in there and just either practice. I slept in there one night and just did a lot of recording, I wrote several songs in there.
Oh, wow.
And then that was the one where I really started experimenting with placement of the mic, putting it in different places and opening doors and windows. And so the album was all recorded in the first 10 days of the residency, actually, in those 2 locations.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What was the rest of the time? Beach time?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of beach time. There's a lot of rum drinking.
Excellent.
Just a lot of practicing and just taking in a different environment, trying to get something in me that I could take back. I took a lot of footage, like film footage that I'm going to use later on for promotion for the record. So it was really fantastic.
Exciting. Now, in addition to this beautiful project, you've also worked on some musical projects in places I've been, but you've been to very remote areas of Iceland.
Yes.
And talk a little about that experience, because that's another kind of stark, isolating, where you were anyway.
Yeah.
Very stark, isolating experience where you can just open your mind to place.
Yeah, actually, the first time I went to Iceland was working with my good friend and amazing choreographer, Ezzy Harold. So we were working on a project transposing written words into music and movement, notation and choreographed movement. And we were working with one of our mutual influences, Hildegard von Bingen's work. So the first time I went to Iceland was a residency called the Klaustred residency in East Iceland. And that was the first time I'd been anywhere that far north. And that kind of started my interest in pretty much an obsession with that part of the world. Just the... I'm not even really sure how to describe it. But there's a very odd sense of openness and not... I wouldn't call it a dark... A lot of people think of Scandinavia or, the far north as like a dark, cold, depressing place, and right. I just don't really... I know we've talked about this.
Yes, we have.
Yeah, I just don't experience that way. Experience it that way. It's just very, I guess stoic would be a word that I use. I feel like it kind of puts you in a place where focus is not difficult.
Right, where focus is not difficult, and also where the forces of nature, I mean, literally the tilt of the earth, which is which is a pretty big force of nature, has direct effect on people's lives, not just on a daily basis, like everyone else, but also in constant heavy cycles that are extremely apparent. Yeah, and it kind of creates a space in your head that there's not a lot I can do about this, and I'm here, and let's just soak it all in, Yeah, and also just the nature in Iceland. Yeah, of course. You don't need much more of a reminder of how important the world actually is than being in a place that beautiful, that naturally beautiful. I feel like Iceland, I've been there 3 times, and every time I've been there, I've been working with Icelandic artists. So I did the last time I was there was in 2016. I did a tour with Eva Ingolf, who's a brilliant violinist, soloist. And we had arranged Icelandic hymns from the 1500s for guitar and violin, and did a tour mostly in the East, in very remote parts of the East. Wow, how'd they go over? It was fantastic. Yeah, I mean, it was really special. Just we played in really small villages, and then obviously we ended in Reykjavik, so we played some bigger performances. But the ones I really enjoyed were in the smaller towns for just very, whoever was there. So in a town where only 30 or so people live there, when 10 people come out, that's pretty good. You had that in New York City, you'd be in a stadium. Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah, so it was really special, and for me especially. Ava's from Iceland, obviously, but lives in New York. But she knows how much I really love and appreciate the culture and the music and the place. So for me to be invited by her was very special for me. And once again, you take on a very ambitious, fascinating task of doing these ancient songs. Yeah, and the music is really intense, to me anyway. Sure. And I know it is to Ava as well. It's ingrained. And that's something I've been doing a lot more of recently. This past spring I was in Scandinavia again, and I recorded 3 albums in the span of about a week and a half or something with different people over there, and that was just really amazing. That's really exciting. A really wonderful guitarist, Martin Lau, who lives in Aarhus in Denmark, we met up and recorded our own renditions of Danish music, Danish folk songs, and some more contemporary songs from the 50s and things like that. And then we each contributed a few of our own songs and recorded an album just kind of mixing, sort of a mixing of the cultures, because he loves American music, as do I, and he also is really knowledgeable about Danish music, which I'm really fascinated by. So that was a really great project. And we've been talking recently about what we're going to do next with that. So there will be more on that soon. And I'm sure, as usual, the case is that there's probably, even though the musics were something you were learning, the older musics, it probably still sounds like you. I would hope so. Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see how that turns out. Okay. And it was on that same trip I had a really special experience of meeting up with Lisa Westentius and Moogie Johnson, who are 2 of my heroes that I've been listening to for over a decade at this point. And Lisa is a really amazing composer and songwriter.
in Denmark, in Copenhagen. And Moogie is a guitarist that works all over the place, but has been working with her for a long time. And I got in touch with them and wound up having the honor of making a record with them of Finnish and Swedish and Danish lullabies.
Oh, how beautiful.
So
Once again, that ties into your interest, too, of the lullaby.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we had a really great time over the course of a few days at Moogie's studio, just meeting up in the morning and making, just trying different things with these songs. And
beautiful.
Yeah, and then after that, I went to Malmö in the south of Sweden and met up with a group of friends that I've been working with for a while now. And we did a really fun project where we went into a studio and invited an audience to come in and sit with us. And then we recorded live, in one sweeping pass, recorded a record of all music that we had written together.
Oh, wow. And were there audience reactions and everything to it?
Yeah.
It's like a live...
Yeah, it was
Great.
really, really special and really fun.
Beautiful.
So I'm really looking forward to next year, all three of these, obviously are still being worked on and being mixed and things, but those will be coming out. And then my record that I was talking about earlier is also, because during that time I was accumulating ideas for how I was going to make that record, because I made it this summer and this was in the spring. And I decided to name it after a Welsh word that I had read about called hiraeth.
Okay,
which,
go ahead.
It doesn't have an English translation, and that's what I thought was really interesting about it, because what it approximates to is having a sense of longing or grief or sort of nostalgic kind of feeling for either a point in time or a place that you can't go back to and possibly never existed.
Well, that is actually an excellent title for your work, because your work very often is evocative of that kind of feeling.
Yeah, I immediately related to that word, because I feel that way, and I feel that way pretty often, especially when I'm writing, and I feel like it's more of a common feeling than, the word would let on. If you explained it to someone, they're like, that sounds kind of weird.
Gloomy or whatever.
Yeah, gloomy or even like sort of like a magical realism element to it. But I feel like in one way or another, it's a pretty common feeling of you feel like you miss somewhere, but you're not sure why you miss it, or maybe you projected a connection that you're not sure was actually there. I just feel like it's a really interesting and common feeling that we don't have a word for in our language. So I really like the idea of that being just the word that hangs over all of this new music, because that's exactly how I feel when I travel. I feel sometimes if I'm going somewhere I've never been, I feel like I'm going back. I have that feeling, and I know a lot of people that travel often that I've talked to immediately relate to that feeling.
Sure.
It's like if you really want to go somewhere, but you feel like you're not going there for the first time. You feel like you're returning, but you've never been there.
Right.
And I feel like that kind of relates to the concept of hiraeth as well. It's just that just the large nature of the world, and when you start exploring more of it, even in the tiny corners, because I travel a fair amount, but I still haven't seen anywhere near, like how many places there are.
Sure.
And I like the idea of having a sense of longing to go somewhere that maybe never existed. To me, it's not necessarily a sad or a dark thing. Again, like sort of what we were discussing with the North and Iceland. But it is kind of a stoic feeling to it, where you're just more of a sense of focus on something.
And I think that unfortunately, this is a very obvious thing, but I mean, in the modern world, the modern American world, but the modern European world, the modern everything world, a lot of those feelings are often sublimated and covered up by busyness and entertainment and all of that. And I think one thing that your music brings out is being in touch with those types of things, and that's a really beautiful way to be more in touch with your humanity.
Oh well, that means a lot to me.
That's how I feel about it. So we're talking to Charlie Rauh here, guitarist, composer, thinker, philosopher, traveler, and I think we're going to take a quick break here and play something off of one of his recordings, and we'll be right back, and maybe we'll have Charlie play a tune for us if he's up for it.
Sure.
Okay, great. We'll be right back.
And if you stay with us for a little while longer, you can win a copy of that very CD right here on WUSB, Stony Brook.
One. So, Charlie, we just heard Augustine there.
Mm-hmm.
That, of course, that was your first quote-unquote solo record, right?
Yes.
And really, really beautiful stuff we played a lot here on the show, and a bit of a different approach than the new one.
Yeah.
In terms of sonic approaches, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little about how you started with the guitar. I mean, were you playing since very young? What's your background on that?
I started out playing clarinet and saxophone when I was younger, mostly doing jazz type music and playing in the school band. And then I took an interest in guitar mostly because of my dad, who's a guitarist. So he started teaching me how to play when I was 13.
What kind of stuff did your dad do?
He does sort of folk. He's a really good fingerstyle player. Does a lot of folk inflected music and kind of country folk type stuff. Plays banjo and guitar.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so he taught me how to play playing like stuff like that, which really kind of sunk in deep. So I started playing when I was 13, and it just quickly took over and kind of like moved me away from playing horns. So
okay.
Mostly because I could play by myself. I could make, music. I could make something happen. I could play more than one note at once.
A full sound.
Yeah.
Right. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course you have brought, your style of playing, of course, does bring melody and chord structure into a very unique arrangement. So you've really brought it out as far as that kind of depth of arrangement, playing those full chordal backgrounds along with melodies, counter melodies, all these kinds of weirdo things you can show.
Yeah.
Weird but beautiful.
Yeah, and I feel like the background playing horns definitely informs that.
Okay.
Of thinking of melodies that way, I think. Or it seems like, I think sometimes the way I approach melodies might come from my first perception of how to play a melody, which was on clarinet. Mm-hmm. So I do think it served a purpose in the way that I play guitar, for sure, especially on electric guitar. That's one of the reasons I started using a volume pedal a lot, is so I could cut the attack and just make the note the way you could on a horn by blowing air. Mm-hmm. Which I did all over the place on Veritas.
Right.
So,
right. A lot of affected in many ways, but gorgeous stuff. Let's talk just briefly about, and we always talk about this, you and I, but your guitars. Right now you're playing it's a Collins, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is beautiful. He just passed, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
But beautiful guitar, nice little small-bodied acoustic, and people would say, that's such a small guitar, but it's not small compared to the rest of your guitars. It's your biggest one in your collection.
It's the biggest one, yeah.
So let's talk a little about your penchant for. We were discussing how you liked small things earlier. We were talking about art, and you like small guitars. Tell us about that.
I do really like small guitars. I like small scale necks.
Uh-huh.
I feel like I play very light. So having a short scale neck, in a more conventional style of guitar, like the Gibson necks are short. They're shorter than Fender. Fender is usually 25 and a half, and Gibsons are usually something like 24 and I think 3/4 or something like that. But I just like the feeling of a shorter scale neck because I play so light. Mm-hmm. And there's that, and I also really like on electrics. I like headless guitars because they're easier to travel with, and they also have a really specific kind of string tension for playing legato style. Because I'm not very good at picking fast, so if I need to do something quick, it's usually all in my left hand. Like hit the string once and play 3 notes.
And so people understand what we're talking about out there. You're really talking about the fact that the guitar is tuning, because that's the biggest factor, because it's the string length. That gives you that different attack point on a headless guitar.
Yeah.
A standard guitar, the head on the guitar has the tuning pegs, one way or another, on the head, and on a standard guitar. And so that means there's a little give up at the top of the neck, where towards the headstock, because there has to be, because the strings have to stretch beyond the nut to be able to hit the tuning pegs. Hopefully this is not more confusing to some of you. But in a headless guitar, the tuners are at the back where the bridge is. Mm-hmm. So where you're actually physically playing, where you're fingering notes, it's a sharper attack for your fingers. Would you say that? That's something like that?
I mean, I guess maybe a simple way to put it would be at the top, the strings aren't wound around anything, and I think that's where the tension difference is, or that's how I perceive it, because the strings are just a fixed length, bridge to nut, so that's the length of the string, and nothing is wound, so like you said, there's no give. And that really lends itself to lighter touch, mm-hmm. I think, and it also to more left-hand oriented playing instead of flat picking or alternate picking, which I've never really picked up on very well. So when I play acoustic guitar, this Collings model that they were really nice in working with me on and built me this custom. The model is called the Baby One. And it's all mahogany. The neck, the body, the sides, all of it's just a solid mahogany. So
it's a gorgeous tone too.
Yeah, I really happy with it. And I'm actually going to be going out to NAMM to represent Collings at
that's great.
Convention. Yeah, me and Cameron Mizell are going to go out there.
Oh, that's exciting.
And play some stuff from our upcoming duo record on Destiny that's coming out next year.
Yeah, and Cameron's played with you in many locations, including right here where we're recording this. In Queens.
Yeah. And we're actually playing that tomorrow. Tomorrow night, Cam and I are going to debut some of this music we've been working at the Bryant Toth Gallery downtown.
Oh, great. Nice.
Yeah.
All right. So, but even your electrics that we were just discussing, you've had them built.
Yeah. I like finding, independent luthiers that are interested in going for something new and working with them on just making a really specific instrument. Just to get, I feel like it's easier to bring out subtleties if you know exactly where to go on the guitar. And mm-hmm. and I feel like, I mean, like I said, there's a few things about playing guitar that I just never really could get a handle on, like picking, alternate picking, like at higher speeds. I'm just not very good at. So that was the first thing that brought me towards the headless guitars, because when I tried one out, I was like, oh, well, this makes more sense. So I think for me to get as subtle as I want to be, I need a really specific kind of guitar. I'm not, I feel like I'm not the kind of guitarist that could just pick anything up and sound the way I want to sound. And I know a lot of players that are, but I'm just totally not that way.
Well, so, in general, what you're really doing is recognizing what you need to bring out, what you need to bring out.
Yeah, there's really,
and that's something most people don't.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. I think there's specific ways I would like to sound that maybe aren't even that noticeable to a lot of people, but I feel the difference if I can play an instrument that is responding to what I'm thinking.
Sure.
The guitar I'm playing today, the Collings, has really kind of taken over for my solo playing, because I love the idea that it sounds like wherever it's being played.
Mm-hmm.
That was what I had a lot of fun recording at the Rauschenberg Foundation, was making a record where each song does sound a little different, but it's because of the space it was recorded in rather mm-hmm. than any effects being used, which are fun too. And I love playing with reverb and delay on electric and volume pedals and stuff. Yeah, that's all great. But I've been taking an interest more in playing just an acoustic guitar and having that room be the sound, that being the effect.
Right.
So I'm really enjoying that with my recent work with solo guitar stuff anyway.
Let's. Are you up for playing something for us?
Yeah. I'll play a song that's off of the record that I recorded at the Rauschenberg Foundation. And this is one of the newer ones, actually, because I wrote that material over the course of 2 years, and this one was written a few months ago. And it's called 1117. And I wrote it about the little details that you notice when you meet somebody for the first time. Not important per se, but just when you meet someone for the first time, how you remember them. I feel like people have different mechanisms to remember what somebody looks like, or how they carry themselves, or what color their eyes are, or things like that. And I find that really interesting. So I was thinking about that when I wrote this. So this is called 1117, and it'll be on the upcoming record, Hiraeth, that'll come out next year, probably in the fall, on Destiny Records.
Charlie Rauh right here on WUSB Stony Brook. Lovely.
Thank you.
Lovely. What was that one called?
1117, like the time.
1117. Beautiful.
Thank you very much.
And I mean, I'm sure you do, but do you have, you don't have to say who, but was there somebody specific in mind at 1117?
It was, I wrote it after I met a friend, from the work that I'm doing in Europe and things like that. I met a friend for coffee, and met up with someone, because I'm always meeting new people through my friends when I'm traveling, or in New York as well. But this was just, this one time that I met somebody for the first time when we were meeting up for coffee, and I was just making notes to myself, like how I can remember who they, like their name and what they look like for when I see them next time, and just really enjoying that process. So when I got back to where I was staying, I wrote this immediately.
Gorgeous.
About that, yeah.
Beautiful work.
Thank you.
So, in your history of music, I'm sure you can name who would you say are some of the composers who you feel are big influences on you?
The first composer that really inspired me to want to create my own music was Duke Ellington.
Okay.
When I was around 9.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, my mother still does, but when I was growing up was always watching a lot of classic films, which is how I got into that, which we've had multiple discussions
Yes, we
about.
have.
And I'm still a great fan of movies from like 30s, 40s, 50s.
We'll do another show on movies.
Yeah, we could do that, yeah. So yeah, the music of, the 30s, 40s, and into the 50s, just the music in those movies, I remember telling my mom when I was a kid that I was really into it. So being the encouraging and wonderful woman that she is, she kind of pointed me in the direction of how I could explore that music, and she told me about Duke Ellington. So I got this cassette tape at the Cotton Club that I still listen to all the time.
That's great.
But that was the first time I was like, wow, I don't just want to play music, because I did. And at that point, I didn't play any instruments. I just hummed all the time, and I really wanted to. I wanted to learn how to play music, but he was the inspiration to want to create music, to write music.
The depth of melody, the strength of the changes, the structure. He was brilliant.
Yeah. And he kind of led me down a path into what he was into, because he was a huge Stravinsky fan and Debussy and things like that. And I really got into the Neo-Russian composers and then into Impressionism and things like that. And then later on, my favorite composer, I would say, is Hildegard von Bingen. And I really love medieval choral music.
And we've talked about this before, too, personally.
And I just really love the simplicity and the power of that music. And especially because, obviously, there were no recordings, so it's all an approximation and interpretation of the records left behind of what it actually sounded like. So, and I kind of love that, too, that I just love the idea of that music and what it stood for, and again, just the directness of it is a big influence on the way that I play solo guitar music. I'm really interested in that because I feel like a lot of solo guitar music, including stuff that I'm really into, takes on this role of, well, the guitar has to cover everything. There has to be a bass line and there has to be a melody. It has to be this kind of full thing. And I do love that. I love a lot of solo guitar that is that way. But I think for me, not only just because I can't play that stuff, but for me, what I'm more interested in is sort of like when I would hear Jim Hall, for instance. When I would hear him do solo guitar, he would just leave all this dead space and just take his time, and that really stood out to me and really inspired me. Don Paris from the Innocence Mission is another guitarist that does a lot of solo work that I really love. In that way as well.
A lot of it is just about space.
Yeah, space and melody and just directness,
right?
Which I really admire, and it's hard. I mean, I work very hard to try to get better at managing that space because I feel like when you do leave the space, whatever you do next, it's like there it is. It's like, so if it doesn't land, then. Then you take yourself right out of it,
Right.
So it's not just about, I feel like it's less of a musical way of thinking and more of just an overall way of thinking to play solo guitar that way, because if you're thinking musically, I'll leave space, you're always going to be, or for me anyway, I shouldn't say understood you, I would feel if I was trying to musically leave space, that I would be in this realm of time of like, how can I make this work with a resolution of all these other things that I just really don't care about.
There's too much thinking involved.
Yeah, and I do want there to be a lot of thought. I want my music to be rooted in thought, just not that kind.
Right.
I want it to be...
there's thought and there's thinking, right?
Right, yeah.
That is, in the world we're talking about right now, that's a subtle difference.
Yeah, that's a...
Planning and,
Yeah, that's a better way of putting it.
Planning and feeling.
Yeah, I would like to be inciting people to think as much as I'm inciting, or trying to incite people to think and trying to incite them to feel on equal levels. That's one of my goals with this music is I want people to be able to hear these songs once and remember something.
Right.
It maybe not, obviously not the whole thing, but maybe. I mean, that's one of the reasons I just think to myself a lot of... I work with babies a few mornings a week at this program that I play music at, and I from being around them and playing, lullabies for them, and just seeing them react with just this like complete awe, like mind blown, I at this really simple music, I think to myself that I wonder if I can get people back there, because everyone experienced that. Every one of us heard something like that, something simple that at that point, at that developmental stage, was just mind-blowing. And I'm really interested to see if I can get that reaction. And I feel like every now and then I get kind of close. Sometimes I give a concert doing solo stuff and I'll start playing and it gets really quiet, and then I'll hear somebody walking out humming something. And that's what I'm going for. And I get a lot of people contact me and they say, I don't know if this is what you're going for, but my 2-year-old really loves listening to your record. And I'm like, that's actually exactly what I'm going for.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I like the idea of unlocking that, of, bringing these really simple melodies into an adult context, but informed by adult life, by exploring and being self-aware, but also approaching it with that open-ended wonder that a baby, an infant, not just a child, but an infant sees the world with just endless possibilities and wonder. And I love the idea of trying to encourage that with this music, or that's what I'm trying to do. And if I'm successful, that would be how I would define it.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the things we're talking about is this sort of wondrous simplicity, yet depth and complexity, but it's all in support of that simplicity.
Yeah.
So it's not like, as opposed to, for example, just humming a tune or just playing the single notes of a melody.
Yeah.
You're fully supporting and giving depth to that melody as well at the same time.
Yeah, that's the goal, and I'm reminded. I always talk about this, but it's a life-changing quote for me when I studied with Connie Crothers for 6 months when I first moved here to New York. She really inspired me in many ways when I was studying mostly improvisation with her. But one thing she told me was that there's a difference between something being complicated and something being complex. And the way she elaborated on that was something complex can be reductive, reduced to a simple foundation that it's built on. And something that's complicated could still be interesting, but lacks that reduction. It's more of a series of winding roads. And I don't think the point of her saying that was to slam either one of those, but it became clear to me when she said that I was interested in having that solid rock foundation of simplicity. And I feel like the older I get, the more I want to go back to that and have nothing else there. And I feel like, again, the older I get and the more I travel and the more that the longer I'm alive, I'm just longing for that simplicity and that foundation. And that's where the concept of Hiraeth, with that word, really appeals to me. Because there is a sense of wanting to go back to something, but I'm not sure exactly what it is. An idea of going back to some kind of origin or something that has to be true. A feeling that there is something that has to be supportive, that foundation has to exist. But I don't exactly know what it is. And I feel like writing these songs and playing this way is the closest I can feel to that.
And it's all part of the search.
Yeah.
So you're actually, none of us will ever get to those things, but to be aware that we're on that journey is a very important thing.
I think so. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Now you play in different venues of all types, and sometimes it's a beautiful concert hall, and you're playing to a rapt audience, paying attention to all the nuances we're discussing, and sometimes you're playing in a bar or a club.
Yeah.
Right? You play all kinds of venues. I have to tell you, having seen you in a bar and a club quite a few times, not that we would wind up in bars together ever, but to having seen you in a bar or a club, I have to tell you that even with the people chatting, or I hate to tell you, some sports game on in the background, we've all experienced that, the nuances of your playing, you'll see people's heads turn around. These are guys who are watching like the football game.
Yeah, yeah.
And their heads will spin around, and they will pay attention because you'll hold them. And they may not pay attention the whole time.
No, yeah, of course. Yeah.
But absolutely they turn around. And so there's something about this simplicity, about this back to a simple way of noticing the world, that is pulling in even these guys who are men and women who are oversaturated with the media and all these things. This little bit of stuff all of a sudden catches them, and you can see them turn around. And that's an accomplishment.
Oh, very much so. And also, I mean, I count myself in that category of being oversaturated. Absolutely. I'm as glued to my phone as anybody, or watching, like, animal videos on YouTube, like all of it. I'm absolutely in that. I'm not outside of that. I feel like I don't feel that I'm an example of somebody that's transcended that.
Right.
I feel like my music is my way of pushing back. Playing this way is my way of pushing back, not just on the world going that direction, but me going in that direction,
Right.
and finding myself very often oversaturated and not paying attention and missing so much nuance and detail, all these things that, like, going back to the babies that I work with, all the things that they're noticing in every second, that the more I see them doing it, the more jealous I am of the ability to do that. And it's not like we have lost that ability. We've lost interest in that ability in a lot of ways, myself included.
Well, we don't pay attention to it as much.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, I actually had a really, a really interesting, example of that was on the way over here.
We're talking about, just briefly, Charlie lives in Brooklyn. I live in Queens, and he came to me, and we're recording this in Queens right now in Woodside. And yeah, trains on the weekend, you may as well just stay home. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
You can't get there from here.
It took 2.5 hours.
That's right.
Yeah.
For something that we could have driven in about 20 minutes.
Yeah,
But
and
yes.
looking back, I totally should have just, taken a car. I don't know what the hell I was thinking. I honestly don't. I didn't even think about that.
So anyway,
There we go, yeah. But on my way here, I got on the train, and I decided not to listen to music. I decided to not have headphones on. And I also decided not to look at my phone, for whatever reason. And it was really interesting, because I wound up sitting next to this really wonderful person that was visiting New York. And we got to talking. It turns out she is a vocalist that lives in Virginia. We've been to a lot of the same places. And I just had this really great, kind of what that song I just played is about, this exact thing of just you meet people when you're aware. You talk to people. You learn things. You talk about music or life or traveling.
Right.
And it was a really nice interaction that never would have existed if I did what I always do and just, keep my headphones on, play on my phone until I get here.
Right.
And I'm so glad that I did that and that I had that little window into someone else's world, because that's exactly what I'm trying to make this music about. And
Right.
and the more I think about it, if I don't keep doing that, I can't keep making this music, or I can't keep making it honestly. Mm-hmm. So, I feel like that is a big part of it. And playing in venues like you were talking about, it is really interesting because simplicity cuts noise.
Right.
And I feel like that's something I forget about, and that a lot of people forget about. But it does. If you try to compete using noise with noise, you just get more noise, which is, in so many different metaphors, exactly what happens most of the time.
So that's the problem with my band, is that what you're saying?
Very much not the case.
You're very kind.
Yeah.
So why don't you play something else for us, Charlie?
Okay.
What would you like to play?
I'll play another song off the record, and this song is called Patience. And this is something that I wrote about the experience of moving by yourself, being on an airplane or a bus or something. When I travel, most of the time I'm by myself, and that's the time when you have to just sit there. And I wrote this about what you start thinking about. First it's obvious things, then less obvious things, and then maybe things you don't even want to think about, but you start thinking about them because you can't do anything. You're kind of limited. You can't go back to the oversaturated response because there's nothing there. You're just sitting there. And you could always, look at your phone or something. But this is kind of about those little windows when, on the way over here, I decide I'm not going to. Which doesn't happen nearly enough. Because, like I said, I feel like most of the time I'm not just part of that culture, but a big proponent of it. I'm way too focused on the wrong things so much of the time. And I wrote this about basically what happens when that can be overcome, when you do just sit in solitude and think. So that's what this song is about.
Lovely. And of course, we do have some little babies screaming outside here somewhere in the distance, so it's kind of appropriate.
Yeah, that works.
So right now you have the new record coming out in 19. Mm-hmm. You have other stuff that's available out there. How can people get a hold of your stuff?
The best way is to go to my website, charlierauh.com. Last name is spelled R-A-U-H. Just Charlie Rauh, one word.com.
And you can just go to our website and you will see that on the playback page, on the set list page today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and on there, I have all of my tour dates listed. You can stream or purchase my debut record, Hereditas, and then the EP I released before that, Innocent Speller. You can listen to all that. And then there's links to like the Spotify page as well. And there's also videos, live videos, and all information pertaining to what I'm doing is on there. And links to all of my social media and SoundCloud, and everything is kind of centralized at that location. So.
It's a busy world having to do all this different maintenance in the social world, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of one of the ironies of it is a lot of the time I do kind of lose my focus and getting lost in the hustle and bustle is trying to manage all of that stuff.
Right, of course.
Because if you don't, then no one can find your music.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a catch-22, but always worth it.
Yeah. So, Charlie Rauh, I want to thank you so much for joining us. When's your next gig in New York?
My next gig in New York is actually tomorrow night.
Well, that's not tomorrow night, because this show won't broadcast till Tuesday.
Oh.
So what about after Tuesday, Charlie?
After Tuesday.
If you know.
What date is Tuesday?
Tuesday, I think, is the 16th.
16th.
That sound right?
Yeah. Hold on. Let me
Listen, we have to check the social media.
Yeah, no, I just have to check my calendar because I don't remember.
And he is so busy. And he really is so busy. It's not a joke. It's a lie when I say, "Oh, let me check my calendar when I'm playing again." That's a lie. But not from Charlie.
I know it's pretty close to that.
So.
I know what it is. Okay. Yeah. I'll just start with my next show in New York.
That sounds great. And we're going to leave all this in, too, buddy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
My next show in New York.
So, Charlie, when's your next show in New York?
My next show in New York is going to be at Muchmore's. I'm doing a solo set with an excellent lineup of, I believe, all guitarists, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong, but it'll be at Muchmore's. I'm doing a solo acoustic set on the 23rd.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and the information for that is on my website.
Of course it is. But yeah, so you guys absolutely have to check out Charlie Rauh. And of course, this interview shall be up on YouTube as they are. This weekend coming up, it'll be up. You'll be able to hear Charlie play live exclusively on WUSB Stony Brook. And also this wonderful interview of influences and confusing dates and everything else. So that's how we are. But Charlie, thanks so much for joining us on Finn's Revolution on WUSB.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
Have good luck on the ride home.
Thank you.
All right, man.
So yeah, Charlie Rauh joining us on WUSB Stony Brook on Finn's Revolution. Pre-recorded the other day as we were attempting to map out calendars and routes home and all the rest of the things. If you enjoyed that and you'd like a signed copy of the visually stunning and audibly stunning Hereditas, Charlie Rauh's first debut CD, you can give us a call right now at 631-632-6901. That's 631-632-6901. I will pop it right in this little mailbag with me and send it right off in the morning to you. So a copy of Charlie Rauh's debut CD, 631-632-6901. Right here. Give us a call, 631-632-6901.